The sun was dipping below the horizon, casting the hills of West Africa in an orange glow that painted the land in a soft, melancholic light. In the bustling streets of Ouagadougou, the capital city of Burkina Faso, life was moving at its usual pace. People trading at the markets, children playing soccer in dusty alleyways, and the occasional honking of car horns breaking the otherwise peaceful atmosphere. But there was something in the R&on undercurrent of tension palpable even among the busiest crowds. In a modest government office, Ibrahim Traoré, the young leader of Burkina Faso, sat behind a desk that looked far too large for his frame. His hands gripped a letter, the edges worn from being read and reread. It was a missive from Nigeria's top military leaders, a group of generals who wielded enormous power not just in their own country, but across the entire region. Their message was clear: you must step down. Your vision is dangerous. If you continue to resist, there will be consequences. The words hung heavy in the air. They were more than just threats. They were a challenge, a direct confrontation to everything Ibrahim stood for. Burkina Faso had become a symbol of defiance against the exploitation and control of foreign powers. And now, the Nigerian generals, alarmed by the rise of a young leader who was reshaping the destiny of an African nation, sought to quash this rebellion before it could spread like wildfire. Ibrahim had been warned about the risks, about the dangers of standing against such powerful figures. But he wasn't like the others. He was a man forged in the flames of struggle, someone who had seen the dark side of life and emerged with a fire burning in his heart, a fire that could not be extinguished, no matter how many threats came his way. His mind raced as he looked out the window, watching the shadows grow longer. The threat had been issued in secrecy, but it was only a matter of time before the whispers found their way into the streets. People would hear of it. They would see the reality of his situation, and they would wonder if he could stand tall in the face of such power. But in his heart, Ibrahim knew something the generals didn't. It wasn't their power that would define the future of Burkina Faso. It was the people. As the news of the threat spread, it didn't cause panic. Instead, it sparked a fire, quiet, simmering resistance among the masses. People began to look at Ibrahim with renewed respect. He wasn't just their leader, he was the embodiment of their dreams, the one who had shown them that Africa could stand on its own, that they didn't have to bow to the foreign powers who had long controlled their fate. The thought of surrender, of retreating into the shadows, was now a distant memory. Ibrahim had awakened something in them, belief in themselves, in their own strength, in the power of unity. Yet the generals underestimated the situation. They believed that by issuing a few threats, by trying to scare Ibrahim into submission, they could regain control. But Ibrahim was a different kind of leader. He didn't lead with fear. He led with conviction. And in a world where power was often measured by military strength and intimidation, Ibrahim Traoré was ready to rewrite the rules. The tension in the air grew thicker as Ibrahim called for a private meeting with his closest advisors. The room was small, but heavy with the weight of what was at stake. His military commanders, his political allies, each of them stood at attention, their faces marked by concern, but also an unwavering trust in the leader they had chosen to follow. Ibrahim stood in front of them, his face calm, but his eyes burned. With a fire that was impossible to ignore, he began to speak, his voice steady but filled with authority. "We will not back down. We will not bow. These threats, they are nothing but words. They cannot break us. This is the moment we show the world that we are not afraid to fight for what is right. We are not afraid to defend our freedom, our dignity, and our future." Where his words hung in the air like a declaration, his inner circle, once unsure of the path ahead, now stood resolute. There is no turning back. Ibrahim's next move would send shockwaves throughout the region. He wasn't going to cower in a corner. He wasn't going to let these generals, these remnants of a dying system, dictate the future of Burkina Faso. The next step was clear. Ibrahim sent a message back to the Nigerian generals. A response they hadn't anticipated. "You are invited to meet me face to face. Not in the shadows, not in secret. Let us meet openly where we can speak the truth of what lies ahead. We will talk not as adversaries, but as equals, with the future of Africa at stake." The generals, taken aback by Ibrahim's audacity, hesitated. They had expected him to crumble, to retreat into silence. But this was a man who would not be intimidated. His invitation was not an act of bravado. It was an invitation to the generals to step into the light, to confront him with the same openness he had shown to his people. There were no more shadows for them to hide in. The battle would now be fought in the open. As the date for the meeting drew nearer, rumors spread like wildfire. The tension was unbearable. People in Ouagadougou, across Burkina Faso, and even beyond its borders, waited with bated breath for the day Ibrahim would face these military giants. Would he be crushed by their power? Or would he rise to the occasion, a symbol of resistance against the forces that sought to break him? The meeting was set. The generals arrived, their demeanor cold, their eyes calculating. Ibrahim, however, was unwavering. He stood tall as they entered the room, his expression unreadable, but the energy in the air was thick with anticipation. The generals sat at the table, their voices dripping with arrogance. They tried to dominate the room with their presence, but Ibrahim stood in quiet defiance, refusing to be intimidated. After what felt like an eternity, he spoke. His words were simple but powerful. "You came here expecting to control me. You thought that by threatening me you could break me. But you have misjudged me. I am not here to negotiate my people's future. I am not here to give in to your intimidation. If we are to meet, let it be on the grounds of respect, not coercion." The generals exchanged glances. They had expected this meeting to be an opportunity to crush him, to show him who held the power. But Ibrahim had flipped the script. His calm and measured tone, he had shattered their illusions of control. For hours, the tension in the room grew. It became clear that the generals were starting to feel the weight of their own arrogance. Ibrahim's words had not only exposed their intentions, but also made them question their place in the larger narrative of Africa's future. This was not a battle Ibrahim had to fight with weapons. It was a battle of ideals, of visions, of the future of an entire continent. And Ibrahim's vision was one of self-determination, dignity, and strength. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, the generals began to relent. They had been forced to confront the reality that their power, once unchallenged, was now in question. The young leader they had threatened had not crumbled. He had risen stronger than they could have ever imagined. As the meeting came to a close, the generals stood in silence. They had no more words, no more threats to make. Ibrahim's defiance had not just won the battle, it had transformed the course of history. In the days that followed, news of Ibrahim Traoré's response spread across Africa like wildfire. His courage, his refusal to bow to external threats, became a symbol of hope for people across the continent. They had seen leaders crumble before foreign powers. They had seen nations bend to the will of others. But Ibrahim had stood tall, a beacon of hope in a time when hope seemed distant. And as the sun rose over Ouagadougou, the city now pulsing with the energy of a new era, Ibrahim stood quietly at his window, looking out at the horizon. The battle had been fought, and for the first time he could see a future where Africa stood, strong, united, and free. This was not just a victory for Burkina Faso, it was a victory for all of Africa. And Ibrahim Traoré had proven that with the right leadership, the courage to stand against the odds, anything was possible. If this story inspired you, moved you, or made you believe in the power of defiance and hope, consider subscribing. For more stories like this, hit the like button and share it with someone who needs a reminder that they too can stand tall against the world's greatest challenges.